Hello, I am Zara. And today we are gonna learn about pollination. But, before we go into the depth of pollination, I would request you to watch my video on the parts of a flower for better understanding on the topic of pollination. I have shared the link of the video on the parts of a flower in the description box below. Thank you. What is pollination? Pollination is the transfer of pollens from the anther to the stigma of a flower. Look at the picture carefully. What do you see? Well, I am sure you can see the process of pollination in which pollens are being transferred from anther to stigma. But, can you guess, what is a bee and the wind doing in this picture? Well, plants are the only living things that cannot move. Scientifically, they can move as seeds, or their roots and trunk can move by growing and stretching out, and their leaves can move by bending. But literally, they cannot move, like how animals and humans can do. Hence, mating becomes difficult for the imperfect flowers. This is the time when biotic factor like bees and abiotic factor like wind come into action. They act as the agents in transferring the pollens from anther to stigma. Thus, they are known as pollinators. There are two types of pollinators. If the pollinators are non-living things, then they are known as abiotic pollinating agents. If the pollinators are living things, then they are known as biotic pollinating agents. Wind and water are the abiotic pollinating agents. Birds, insects, and bats are the biotic pollinating agents. Pollination helps in fertilization of the egg cells in the ovary, which in turn helps in the formation of a seed and a fruit. When the fruit is eaten by living things, the seeds are then dispersed in the environment for the reproduction of a new plant, thus continuing the process of a plant's life cycle. How does fertilization takes place? When pollen lands on stigma, it germinates, forming pollen tubes, and reaches down to the ovary, fertilizing the ovules. When the ovules are fertilized, seed are formed. As the seeds ripen, ovary begins to swell, forming a fleshy fruit. After the formation of seeds and fruit, sepals, petals, and stamen fall off, as their purpose is served. Now that we know about the process of pollination, let us dig deep into the types of pollination. There are two main types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination is further divided into two main categories, namely, autogamy and Geitonogamy. What is self-pollination? When the pollens are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the flower, belonging to the same plant, then, that process is known as self-pollination. There are two types of self-pollination. When the pollens are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower, then, that process is called autogamy. Such flowers do not need pollinating agents. When the pollens are transferred from the anther of one flower to the stigma of the other flower, then, that process is known as Geitonogamy. What is cross-pollination? When the pollens are transferred from the anther of the flower of one plant to the stigma of the flower of another plant, then, that process is known as cross-pollination. This is how cross-pollination takes place. Which type of pollination is better? Well, from the genetic point of view, cross-pollination is more preferable over self-pollination, because new kinds of species are produced, due to the mixing of genes from the male and the female gametes of a flower, during the process of fertilization.